Hi, I'm Helen from Halton Food. Today I'll be chatting with Sean James of Sean James Consulting and Design about how to prepare your garden for winter. Master gardener Sean James has built an international reputation for sustainable landscaping. He is committed to teaching others the beauty and importance of using native species and teaching others sustainable gardening techniques. So tell us some of the things you do to prepare your garden for winter.
I'm a lazy man. There are things that you have to do, but I'm going to avoid doing as much as I can avoid. I'm going to bring any of my tropicals that can go dormant through the winter. So this is actually really cool. This is cumin, which is related to ginger, and it can just go to sleep for the winter. So I'll probably just take that whole pot inside and tuck it away in my cold cellar. If I want it to save space, this, dahlias, canna lilies, calla lilies, all those things, I could take them out, take off most of the soil, put them in a box and maybe cover them with leaves or peat moss. I try and avoid peat moss wherever I can because it's not terribly environmentally friendly, or even a sifting of mostly dried compost. You want it to be pretty darn dry. If you have a lot of people in your house, you might want to put a little sign on it that says, "Do not water." I had a whole bunch of things die once because someone got all gung-ho and watered them. So those have to be brought in. There are certain plants like asters and ironweed and agastache or anise hyssop, which are a little aggressive. They tend to spread like mad. I love my asters. You'll see lots of asters as we go through the garden, but they do seed down freely. This guy here seeds down quite a bit too. So they're one of the only things that I bag up. I can't stand bagging stuff. Again, lazy, but also because it takes huge resources to do that. But I will bag up weeds that are in seed and good plants that produce too many seeds. And I send that away to be composted because the composting is supposed to kill the weed seeds. I steal my neighbor's leaves and I mulch everything up on the property. I have an electric blower and an electric mower, so I will blow things off the flat surfaces onto the grass, run over them with the lawnmower, and either put them directly in the garden or squirt them into the garden. Like I'll take the bag and shake it in. I use all my chopped up leaves, well, I use some of my chopped up leaves to hill up my roses. I have a few roses. I can't help it. So I'll just make a big cone of leaves around them, and that helps them over winter, and the rest I spread out through my garden. I don't cut down anything until springtime. So that was a beginning of an answer to your question.
So when you're spreading these leaves, it's very important to shred them as much as possible?
It helps an awful lot. It helps the breakdown process. Mm-hmm. You can exclude light. You can have too many leaves and they get wet and they mat down, and then they can suffocate the plants that are underneath them, especially with lawn. If you chop them up, then as soon as you break up the big veins, they just crinkle up and sift into the grass. As soon as I mow this, you will see a mess, and then half an hour later it's gone. And also mowing them up, so this is tar spot from my neighbor's Norway maple. By chopping things up like that, you allow beneficial fungi to get in there and fight the disease fungi. I wouldn't recommend, people will tell you to bag up tar spot and powdery mildew leaves and so on. Those are fungi spores that are in the air. So you're breathing them in right now, yay. Mother Nature can take care of this. And let's say you cleaned up every leaf, you were really good, it's gonna blow from upwind anyway. So it's just chop them up and let Mother Nature take care of it. She's really good at that.
Oh, that's good to hear, because a lot of leaves in my neighborhood have that tar spot, and I've always been avoiding using them, so.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm also Bullfrog powered, which is a renewable energy company. My natural gas is from Bullfrog. My cars, my vehicles are offset. Someone gets a free upgrade to biodiesel, and all my electricity is from solar or small scale hydro. So I can use an electric blower, which is super quiet, and I can use my electric rechargeable mower, and also super quiet, and not have a carbon footprint from it.
Oh, nice. So is there anything we should not do if we want to protect the native insects and bee population?
It's funny, I'm always surprised by nature. Even I think I know what I'm doing, and I still get surprised. I was cleaning up some dead leaves on a clematis last year, and there are butterflies that shelter in the fallen leaves. Things like the question mark butterfly and the morning cloak butterfly. And I had leaves all over me when I was done, and I started brushing them off. And I went to brush this one, and it flew away, and they're leaf colored on the bottom. And all of a sudden there's this flash of bright orange. I was startled by a butterfly. Sean James, scared by butterflies. But it was really fascinating how good a mimic they are. Things like that live in the leaf litter, which is another reason that I don't clean up. I don't cut everything down in the fall. And there's multiple reasons for that. One is because the plants hold the snow like little snow fences and shelter themselves. One is that it brings the birds in, and if we can bring the birds in, then they'll take care of many of the pests for us, or at least keep the populations under control. Another is that the predators need that shelter, the bigger insects, and they may have eggs, like with praying mantids. They may have eggs laid on the plants and so on. We clean up in the fall, or we used to, because of controlling the pests. The truth is that the pests are going to be fine no matter what we do. It's the predators that we're controlling, which is exactly the opposite of what we want to do. So I really am always urging people not to clean up in the fall. Also, a lot of the seed heads are beautiful. The way the plants hold the snow, the way the grasses hold the snow. This is switchgrass back here, and it's gorgeous in the wintertime. It turns a lovely tawny color, and then again, birds come and eat the seeds. So yeah, cleaning up in the fall, cutting everything down, leave it till spring. And leave it till spring until things have warmed up to 10 degrees Celsius or so. That way things can wake up and fly around.
So I guess that would mean you're against these big gas leaf blowers, not only because they're like using gas,
Yes.
but also because people tend to just scrape their lawns clean.
I don't understand. Everybody asks me about what fertilizers to use, and I don't use fertilizers. I'm a member of the Garden Writers Association, and every time we have a meeting, they give you samples of stuff, and it's always fertilizers, and I got a garage full of fertilizer that I'm never going to use. If you provide organic matter to the soil, that kickstarts the whole soil microbiome. All the beneficial fungi like mycorrhiza, all the insects and so on, and from worms on down to microscopic things that aerate the soil, that release nutrients, that nibble on the rocks, literally in the case of bacteria, and release nutrients, that dissolve the rocks in the case of fungi and release nutrients. These are all important things. There's loads of phosphorus in the soil already. It's just bound, it's stuck to the soil. So when we put phosphorus on, most of that just ends up in the waterways. And that causes problems, obviously, in terms of algal bloom, and it doesn't do the lawn any good. When you mulch up the leaves, you support all of life and you release all of the nutrients. Imagine if I only gave you whatever the big three nutrients are for humans. For plants, it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. You wouldn't be very healthy for very long. You need all of them, and recycling nutrients is going to give you that.
So you only cut down in the springtime, and you cut right down to the base as they tell you to do?
Good question. I do not. I'm also a member of the Perennial Plant Association, and I got an award one year for a biodiversity garden in Oakville. So off I went to Minneapolis, and there was a whole day just for rain gardens. I was in heaven. But they had all these great speakers, and one lady was talking about bees, and she said there's lots that we can do for the bees. The cheapest and easiest thing, however, is when you're cutting down your garden in the spring, leave the perennial stems 6 to 8 inches high, and then each of those stems can be a potential bee house, which I thought was really cool. And the truth of the matter is, in days after you do it, plants are going to be coming up and covering that anyway. And the other thing I do when I do cut it down is I work on the let it lay idea. And I've actually got a YouTube video about that. Oh Sean. When you cut it down in little increments and just leave it be, again, you're creating homes, you're creating shelter, you're creating places for all those things like rove beetles and ground beetles, which eat snail and slug eggs. You're creating places for them to live. Excuse me. But you're also recycling nutrients onto the surface of the garden. And some plants are really good, like our friend switchgrass here, brings up nutrients from deep in the soil. The roots go down this deep. So they're bringing up weird things like molybdenum that might get depleted on the surface. So that's another good reason to do that.
Do you have a vegetable garden?
I have a vegetable garden that I mostly ignore. We did better with it this year than usual. Most of what I do is scatter the vegetables through the garden so that you have a better predator-prey relationship. I have lots of vegetables. There's a tomato growing away to beat the band. I expect I'll eat that before I go inside. Not many of the vegetables make it inside. I'm too busy grazing in the garden. But I grow things in pots and I grow things in the garden for a couple of reasons. If something's in a pot, Mr. Bunny is not going to be as likely to stand up to get it because he's very exposed and he can't look around as well. So you're protecting your plants a little bit. It also makes it easier to harvest when they're raised up like that. Putting them in the garden gives you a better predator-prey relationship. So there will be more better and more varieties of insects and birds and you name it, arthropods, all sorts of stuff, spiders, that are going to help control the problems. I have Japanese beetles, but I don't have a Japanese beetle problem like most people do. I let my creek go wild beside my house, and that brings in song sparrows and red-winged blackbirds, and they eat adult Japanese beetles. I don't care about starlings, I don't love them, but they eat the grubs, so do robins. The more creatures that come here, the fewer pests I have. And even some weird things like scale on plants. I was told, if you got scale, you're in trouble. Maybe you should just rip out that plant. And something took a liking to euonymus scale and completely cleaned it up in my garden. And that, I was taught that there was nothing you could do. You were just out of luck. Mother Nature can figure it out. It's crazy.
So it's all just about creating a balance between predator and prey.
Yeah, well, and getting out of her way, right? She's got it. She's had it forever. Gardening is refereeing. You just stop one thing from taking over another thing, and the rest of it is going to turn out well.
If you had to give only one piece of advice to a new gardener to clean up in the fall, what would that be?
We're very lucky in Canada. We're surrounded by fall colors. That's not the case in most of the world. Sit back and relax and enjoy it. This is the time of year that you shouldn't be killing yourself in the garden. Just take time, wander around, look at it, enjoy the fruits of your labor, literally and figuratively. Think about what you might be doing in the future, like next year and so on, and maybe make notes and set reminders. But other than that, just sit back and enjoy it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Sean. This has been a real pleasure to see your garden and to chat with you about what we should be doing to winterize our garden.
Thanks for all you do as well.
Go.
So, something I forgot to mention, and it's really important, another reason not to cut the garden down in the fall. Often we do it when the plants are just finishing up their life. So like the hostas might still be turning yellow. And we go in and we clean everything up because that's going to be the nicest day in the next week or whatever. The problem is that when we do that, then we go and we clean up this hosta and that hosta, and in my case as professionals we go from property to property. We're spreading every disease that was on the first hosta to all the other hostas. There is a virus that's affecting milkweed, and if I cleaned up in the fall, they're definitely still standing there even if the leaves are turning yellow. I would be spreading it from milkweed to milkweed. So that's a really good reason to leave it standing. Even vegetables. Like I've got my tomato here. It's not much left of it now. But I will leave that there until springtime. I can't think of any good reason to clean it up. And maybe the birds and animals will come and eat the almost tomatoes. So that's another good reason to keep it. I will empty if I have fragile planters, I mean this is a horrible plastic thing that I inherited. But If I have clay planters, I'll empty those, usually spread that compost out into the garden because I'm switching to compost in my planters as opposed to peat moss. So I'll spread that around and either turn them upside down and put feet under them so they stay dry, or put them in the shed so they stay dry. So that's important too.